The moment my female CEO laughed at me for wanting the department head role, I knew my career at that company had already ended. I was standing across from her desk, hands folded, voice steady. "The position has been vacant for almost a year," I said. "I've been covering the responsibilities informally. If the company needs someone to step in officially, I'm ready." She didn't look at my proposal. She leaned back and laughed. Not a polite laugh, not awkward, a real one. "How old are you again?" she asked. 49, I answered. She smiled, still amused. "Right. Maybe it's time to start thinking about early retirement." The room went quiet. No follow-up questions. No discussion about results or experience. Just that sentence, hanging in the air like a verdict. I waited. Maybe she would clarify. Maybe she would soften it. She didn't. Instead, she added, "Department heads need energy. People who are still building something, not maintaining." Maintaining 16 years of growth, crisis management, and mentorship reduced to a word. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because I understood. The conversation was already over, in her eyes. I wasn't a future investment. I was a cost that hadn't been trimmed yet. "I see," I said. She glanced back at her screen. "Good. I'm glad we're aligned." Aligned. That was the word she chose. I walked out of her office without raising my voice, without defending myself. The hallway felt longer than usual, but I didn't slow down. Something had shifted. Cleanly and permanently. I wasn't angry. I was clear. Clear that I had just been told exactly where I stood. Clear that loyalty meant nothing once you stopped fitting the image. Clear that staying any longer would only teach them how much disrespect I was willing to tolerate. By the time I sat back down at my desk, I already knew what I was going to do next. I hadn't planned it. I hadn't even admitted the possibility before that morning. But once someone laughs at the years you gave them, the decision makes itself. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revengeaita. While inspired by real workplace dynamics and emotional truths, all characters, companies, and events are imagined for storytelling purposes. Each story carries its own message about dignity, self-worth, and the cost of underestimating someone who has quietly carried more than they were ever credited for. Why does the hardest work so often arrive without a title? By the time I left the CEO's office, I had already been doing the department head's job for almost 8 months. No announcement, no paperwork, just a quiet assumption that I would handle it. "Hazel, can you run the meeting?" Mark from operations had said one morning, poking his head into my office. "She still hasn't named a replacement." I ran it. When a client threatened to walk because a deadline slipped, my phone rang. "Hazel, we need you." Finance said, "You're the only one who understands how all the teams connect." I fixed it. New hires were sent to my desk without explanation. "They said you'd explain how things actually work," a junior analyst told me. Pulling up a chair, I explained. I always did. One afternoon, after a particularly tense cross-department call, my colleague Dana leaned over and lowered her voice. "You realize you're already the department head, right? Except for the title." I said, "And the pay," she added quietly. The irony sat heavy between us. I was trusted to calm conflicts, train managers, and absorb pressure from every direction. Yet when it came time to acknowledge that responsibility, the room suddenly went silent. During one budget review, I spoke up. "If we restructure this workflow, we can save weeks every quarter," I said. The CEO nodded absently. "Good suggestion. Let's move on." Later, the same idea came out of her mouth in a board meeting. This time, it was called leadership. I never asked for the role because I wanted power. I asked because the work was already mine, and pretending otherwise had started to feel dishonest. The company was comfortable letting me carry the weight as long as I did it quietly. That was the unspoken agreement. I would lead without authority. They would benefit without commitment. And the moment I tried to name what I had already been doing, they laughed. I sat at my desk that afternoon, unread messages piling up, and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, recognition. The kind that arrives when a pattern finally makes sense. I stopped opening my calendar and closed my inbox instead. What kind of leader laughs instead of listening? I replayed the meeting in my head all afternoon, not because I doubted what I heard, but because I finally understood why it sounded so practiced. "You're good at what you do," the CEO had said, still smiling. No one's denying that. I had nodded. Then I don't understand why stepping into the role is an issue. She folded her arms. Hazel, experience is valuable, but too much of it becomes inertia. Inertia, I repeated. Yes, she said. Energy matters more at that level. Momentum. People who want to build, not just maintain. I've been building this department for years, I said quietly. She tilted her head, the smile returning. You're reliable, and reliable people are essential. But they don't usually change roles. That was the moment it clicked. Reliable wasn't a compliment. It was a boundary. So reliability disqualifies me, I said. She laughed again. Softer this time. Don't be defensive. I'm trying to protect you. From what I asked. From disappointment, she replied. From pushing too hard at this stage of your career. This stage, not my skills. Not my results. My stage. She glanced at the clock. You should be grateful, Hazel. A lot of companies would have already made tougher decisions. Tougher than laughing at me, I asked. She didn't answer that. She stood, signaling the meeting was over. We value what you bring. Just not in that capacity. Value. Another word that sounded generous until you listened closely. As I gathered my papers, she added, almost kindly. Stability is rare these days. You have it here. Don't underestimate that. I walked out knowing the laughter hadn't been spontaneous. It was rehearsed, reinforced, and rewarded. This wasn't one woman's bias. It was a system that smiled while it kept you in place. By the time I reached my desk, I stopped telling myself I had been misunderstood. I had been understood perfectly. Why does no one speak up when the laughter isn't funny? I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, my screen filled with messages that had nothing to do with what had just happened. Hazel, can you review this before the call? Hazel, the client's pushing back again. Hazel, quick question when you have a minute. I answered none of them. Mark walked past my desk and slowed, then kept going. Dana glanced up, met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. The room sounded the same as always: keyboards, muted calls, low voices, but something underneath it had shifted. A few minutes later, someone stopped beside me. It was Claire from compliance, new enough to still look uncertain when she spoke. I heard, she said softly. Heard what I asked. She hesitated. The meeting. I waited. I'm sorry, she whispered, then added quickly, I really am, before I could respond. She walked away. That was it. No outrage, no follow-up. Just sympathy delivered quietly, like an apology for existing in the same space. Dana eventually rolled her chair closer. She didn't look at me when she spoke. They won't back you, she said. Not openly. I know, I replied. They need you where you are, she continued. If you move up, someone else has to carry what you carry. And if I don't move at all, I asked. She exhaled. Then nothing changes. Her honesty hurt more than the CEO's laughter. At least the laughter was obvious. This was practical. The realization settled slowly. Silence wasn't cowardice. It was strategy. Everyone benefited from things staying exactly the way they were. My reliability made their jobs easier. My presence absorbed risk. My voice, as long as it stayed within approved limits, was useful. Defending me would cost them something. Staying quiet cost them nothing. My phone buzzed again. Hazel, are you joining the 2 o'clock? I turned it face down. Staying meant agreeing to be invisible in exchange for stability, not just today. Not just this role. Permanently. I leaned back and let the quiet do its work. What if the real reason you stay is fear? I didn't go home right away that evening. I stayed at my desk long after most people left, not working. Just sitting there with my thoughts finally loud enough to hear. You're being dramatic, I told myself quietly. You have a steady job, health insurance, a paycheck that arrives on time. Another voice answered back, sharper than I expected. And how much dignity does that paycheck buy? I closed my eyes and heard the CEO again. Maybe it's time to think about early retirement. Earlier, the words had stung. Now they sounded different, clearer. You're afraid, I said under my breath, of starting over, of being the oldest person in the room, of proving her right. I thought about the years I had stayed because leaving felt reckless. About telling myself that stability was a virtue, that loyalty would eventually matter, about choosing predictability over pride, again and again. 49 isn't old, I said. But it's old enough to know when you're being managed out. The silence answered me. I opened my calendar and scrolled back through months of meetings I had led without credit. Crises I had resolved without acknowledgement. You didn't stay because they valued you, I said quietly. You stayed because you were scared to test your value somewhere else. That realization didn't hurt the way the laughter had. It settled, solid, unavoidable. The insult from that morning replayed once more. But this time it didn't tighten my chest. It straightened my spine. Early retirement, I said aloud, tasting the words, or maybe early honesty. I gathered my bag and stood. Not with urgency. With resolve. Fear had been making my decisions for a long time, dressing itself up as patience and responsibility. Now that I could see it clearly, it felt smaller, manageable. As I shut down my computer, my phone lit up with another message asking for help on a project due tomorrow. I didn't answer it. I slipped the phone into my bag instead. For the first time in years, I walked out without explaining myself. What if the opportunity was already there, waiting quietly for me to stop pretending I didn't see it? I found the message that night while scrolling through my old LinkedIn inbox. It was buried under years of unanswered notifications, dated almost 2 years back. Hazel, if you're ever open to a conversation about leadership roles in New York, I'd love to talk. We've been following your work. I remembered reading it the first time. Remembered closing the app and telling myself, I'm not that person. I don't jump ship. Loyalty had felt like integrity back then. I stared at the name again. Ethan Moore, executive director at a competing firm in New York. We had met once at a conference. He had asked real questions, listened without interrupting. I had noticed that even then. I locked my phone and sat with it for a moment. This isn't revenge, I said quietly to myself. This is information. I unlocked the screen and hit call before I could talk myself out of it. It rang twice. Ethan Moore, he answered. This is Hazel Carter, I said. I'm not sure if you remember me. There was a brief pause, then a smile in his voice. Of course I do. I wondered when you'd call. I ignored your message, I said. I shouldn't have. You were loyal, he replied. That told us something too. I swallowed. I'm not calling to complain. I'm calling to ask if the conversation still makes sense. It does, he said immediately. We've followed your department restructures and crisis turnarounds for years. Your name comes up often. My name, I repeated, not your age, he added, as if reading my mind. Your work. We talked for 15 minutes. No flattery, no vague promises, just questions about teams, pressure, accountability. When we hung up, my hand was shaking slightly, not from fear, from recognition. I set the phone down and sat very still. For the first time since that laugh in the CEO's office, the future didn't feel like something I had missed. It felt like something that had been waiting. What does it feel like to finally be evaluated on merit? Ethan met me in a quiet conference room the next morning. He didn't open with pleasantries. Tell me how you'd stabilize a team that's lost 3 managers in 6 months, he said. I'd start by stopping the churn, I replied. Clear priorities, fewer emergency pivots. Let people finish what they start. He nodded. And when the board wants results in 90 days, then we choose what to disappoint, I said. Because pretending everything is urgent is how you burn people out. A woman across the table. Lena, operations lead, leaned forward. What would you change first? Decision rights, I said. If no one knows who owns the call, everyone hesitates. Ethan didn't glance at my resume. He slid it aside. Good. Let's talk reality. The New York branch is our largest, he said. It's also the messiest. Revenue is strong. Culture is fractured. I'm not interested in fixing optics, I said. I fix systems. That's why you're here, Lena replied. Ethan folded his hands. Director role. Full authority over the branch. You'll inherit a team that's tired and skeptical. Pressure doesn't scare me, I said. Ambiguity does. You won't have much of that, he said, but you'll have resistance. Then they'll get consistency, I said. That usually quiets resistance. He smiled once. We need leadership, not rescue. I held his gaze. Then don't rescue me. He nodded. Good, Lena added. We expect long hours at first. I expect honesty, I said. That's how this works. Ethan pushed a folder toward me. We'll formalize after you think it through. No rush. I stood steady. There is a rush, not on your end, on mine, outside the room. He stopped me. One thing, he said, This won't be easy. I'm not looking for easy, I replied. I'm looking for meaningful. I walked away knowing this wasn't an escape. It was an appointment. What does power sound like when it's afraid? I handed in my resignation the next morning. No speech, no explanation, just a single page, printed, signed, and placed on the CEO's desk. She looked at it, then up at me. There was no laughter this time. Is this a negotiation tactic? She asked. No, I said. It's notice. She stood slowly. We can revisit the conversation we had. There's nothing to revisit, I replied. She circled the desk, voice shifting into something careful. Hazel, let's be practical. You're valuable. We can make adjustments. Adjustments to what I asked. Title, scope, compensation, she said quickly. We could formalize the department head role, effective immediately. I didn't respond. She continued. There's room to increase your package, and a path forward. You don't need to throw away everything you've built here. I met her eyes. I didn't build this alone. I just carried more of it than you wanted to see. Her jaw tightened. You're reacting emotionally. I'm reacting accurately, I said. She exhaled. I didn't think you'd actually leave. That was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. You told me to think about early retirement. I replied. I thought about it. I decided to retire from being invisible. Her voice sharpened. This industry isn't forgiving to people who start over at your age. I'm not starting over, I said. I'm continuing somewhere else. She hesitated. Is this about New York? I didn't confirm it. I didn't need to. We could match whatever they're offering, she said. We can fix this. I picked up my copy of the letter. You can't fix something you never respected. Silence filled the space between us. Not the awkward kind. The final kind. As I turned to leave, she spoke once more. You're making a mistake. I paused at the door. No, I said evenly. I waited too long to stop making one. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. What happens when experience walks out the door? My first week in New York moved fast. No welcome speeches, no easing in. Half the team doesn't trust leadership, Lena told me during our first check-in. They've seen too many plans die halfway through. Then we won't sell plans, I said. We'll make decisions and stand by them. She nodded. That'll be new. While I was settling in, the updates from Boston came quietly, through people who used to call me for help. They missed the delivery window, Mark said over the phone one night. No one caught the dependency. Who signed off? I asked. Silence. Then, no one wanted to. A week later, Dana texted. 3 managers resigned. Same week. I stared at the message, then put my phone down. I didn't call anyone back. The first audit happened shortly after. Claire mentioned it in passing when we crossed paths at an industry event. The board's reviewing operational gaps, she said, carefully. They're asking questions about what I asked, about why so much knowledge walked out with one person. I said nothing. A few days later, Ethan mentioned it during a late call. Your former CEO's authority has been restricted. Restricted how? I asked. She needs board approval for major decisions now, he said. Temporary, they claim. I pictured her across a long table, explaining delays to men and women older than both of us combined. People who didn't smile when things went wrong. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance. The final update came from Dana again. She has to present every week now. No more solo calls. I closed the message. Back in my office, Lena knocked lightly. They're responding well to the new structure, she said. Fewer emergencies, more ownership. Good I replied. That means it's working. What happened in Boston wasn't revenge, it was gravity. Systems reveal what people try to hide. And once the weight shifts, no one needs to announce the fall. What if the best response to disrespect is success without permission? By my 3rd month in New York, the noise had settled. Not because the work became easier, but because the team stopped bracing for chaos. Just tell us what you want decided, Lena said during one leadership sync. We're tired of guessing. You'll never have to guess, I replied. If I ask for something, it's because I've already thought through the cost. That became the rule. Decisions had owners, deadlines had reasons. People stopped whispering and started speaking plainly. One afternoon, a senior manager named Thomas stayed behind after a meeting. I've worked under 6 directors, he said. You're the first one who doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. I don't believe in leading from a distance. I told him. It shows. He said, people trust you. That word followed me more than any title ever had. The last update from Boston reached me quietly. The way real endings usually do, Dana called once, voice low. She's been moved out of day-to-day control, she said. Still there, just contained. No announcement, I asked. No, Dana replied. Just fewer decisions, fewer rooms she's allowed in. I thanked her and ended the call. There was no relief in me, no sense of victory, just closure. That evening, my team gathered for a brief check-in. No speeches were needed. We're stable, Lena said. Clients noticed. Good, I replied. Stability is earned. After they left, I sat alone for a moment, not replaying the laughter from months ago, but acknowledging what it had given me: clarity, movement, a line I would never step back across. Here is the lesson I carry now, and the one I want you to hear clearly: loyalty without respect is not virtue. It is self-neglect. No job, no title, no promise of stability is worth shrinking yourself to stay comfortable. The moment someone shows you that your years no longer matter to them, believe them and act accordingly. I did not retire. I moved forward.